once believed, now I don't know. I want to walk in faith. Said I once had love, but I'm cold now. Let's make me to love again. Revive me. Revive us, please. Revive them. I said a love song, oh Savior, pouring the Spirit out. It's a love song. Love you. I made you believe there's one. Oh, this love song.
I literally almost cannot believe that we are here on our 8th act of the 8 hours to choose virtual event that came organically from a posture of brokenness in my heart for a country that I have a love and affinity for that has been extremely bipolar since its existence, and saying this is our 244th year and only 8 days, actually 7 days away from that. And the question was, what if the collection of this country, of people in this country, a majority of us, decided that we're not going to deny what has happened in the past, even this year in particular, but that we would look forward in oneness and start making a daily choice of love, not hate. We, the people of the United States of love, crossing out hate. And those days turned into hours, 8 hours, going through the principles of Mission1Race's journey to oneness, the curriculum, the principles, just the foundations of it, inspired by the love of God, along with the event, which we're going to talk about today, that launched it all in 2019 in a very imperfect but perfect way. And we said, understand, hour one, that'll open your heart, then a place where we can possibly forgive, hour two. When we can relate in hour three, heal in hour four, supernaturally, of course, throughout this. Then we can connect or have a way to, well, we must connect, right? That's the principle. And from that connection, then we can get to that there is a pivot that happens in reconcile, but we're not done there. We go beyond just reconciliation or a component, or we flush out components of reconciliation called love. And now we find ourselves in the act, because true love and the outside expression of that, from that love, it motivates, is the greatest fuel on this earth. We were made in it, founded in it, made forward, and it propels us forward to this act point. So there is no such thing as us saying that we're going to go through all that and then just go back to bed. Right? At these decision points in our life, I remember when I first really found out about extreme poverty in my church, it was something where I felt that decision point, because once you know the truth, right, you're forced to deal with it. And you either say, right, let me numb myself, right? Let me delegate it. It's someone else's decision. It's someone else's problem. Or you can't help it. Like you find yourself where you're like, what do I do next? That's why we're here. We're here to say, hey, we're asking the same question, or had the same question. And what we decided is we're going to go as a community of ragtag people, of people from all different backgrounds and uniqueness and points of view. And we're going to go imperfectly towards that direction. That's where we find ourselves in ACT. So our guests that we had the last 4 episodes, I want to say thanks to first, Mona Clark, Dr. Sean Moore, my father, JW, never knew it was JW, John William Relaford later. And today you're going to see 2 awesome men that are part particularly of this, the journey 2020, Josh Stay Fly, and the awesome Glenn McWhirter, Pastor Glenn McWhirter, who I met on the course of 2017, where this charity running thing was even planted in my heart, on the LA Marathon course. Let me go here before we go to these interviews. I want to talk to you about our tenets, and actually maybe reveal a little bit about the event. Here's a precursor, and then we're going to talk about it later. Watch this. Da-da-da! It's like magic. Here's our in progress logo, 98%, Mission1Race, the journey 2020. Man, it's surreal. How do you take something that's just a word that God gives to you, imperfectly walk it out, launch a movement, do it, basically fail, have humanity and brothers and sisters from all around finish it for you, only have wanted to do it once, and it turned into this annual cornerstone, never before done, watch this, epically inclusive event. Only God. Here's how you get involved, and don't fret, because we're going to come back to it. Here's a QR code. You take your phone, take a quick picture of it. It goes to the website, or you just type it in yourself, mission1race.org. And on that website, you can go right to get involved and run. It'll go to the landing page or go to the event tab, and then you'll find a link to the landing page as well. You can't miss it. There's so many inclusive ways to get involved. We'll talk more about it. Run, volunteer, launch a team, a corporate or church or nonprofit team. We'll talk more about, we have a unique relationship with those actual funds on your page that you fundraise. You get blessed too. We're doing this together as a community. So with that said, I want to lean in and talk to you a bit about this word act. And I want to say thank you to all the people that have went on this journey with me, knowing that we as a community understand that there's folks from all different backgrounds and faith or possible will beliefs that aren't maybe current beliefs. But we can meet in the middle ground and say, there's good stuff in these scriptures. There's good stuff in this wisdom. And it teaches us about these words and connects us. So I have two connected to ACT right now. Isaiah 1:17, chapter 1, verse 17. Learn to do good. Wow. Humility before we even get started. Learn to do good. Implying that we can definitely learn to do bad and or not quite notice it, but we're defunct in it, and we're not actively doing it. It's not something that organically just happens. We have to fight for goodness, seek justice, action there too, seek it. There's actually look around like, is that unjust? Not just then get angry. Then what happens? Correct oppression. Oppression, there's an outside force that's saying that based on who you are or who they are, that there's a demonstrative, there's a pro-con relationship to a group, no matter what puts them in the margin, there's oppression there. Bring justice to the fatherless, plead the widow's cause. There's an absolute cause. So that's both for folks that are in and or out of the church, but definitely in the church, saying that I didn't know that we should be involved with social issues. And so that absolutely, that's where the witness of love happens, right? When we show that we care about our brothers and sisters of all different walks of life. Galatians 6:9. For those of us that have been involved with this movement on some level, and I'm not just talking racial reconciliation. Remember, Mission1Race is human reconciliation, everyone in the margins. I want us to both address the issues, the systemic and the social and other and legislate, but more than just legislate, but transform and bring our hearts to the table and let God do some deep work on that, right? So that we actually are walking it out, not just because there's bumpers on our bias, and we go, oh man, can't say that because that might come off wrong, but actually check ourselves and say, wait a second, that's a human. How does that affect them? And that then determines my actions. That's what we're asking for. But if you've been involved with that on any level, don't grow weary in doing good. For in due season, we will reap. And if we do not give up, I need this. Let's look at the definition as far as the dictionary is concerned. You're like, oh, you don't need to define act, but maybe take action. I love this. Do something. We're here for your something. People seem to have the exact prescription nowadays saying, if you do this, that's going to bring about healing. That's going to bring about forgiveness. That's going to bring about reconciliation. And then ultimately, it's going to disappear. We don't believe that. But we believe it's a complex problem, just like a lot of our other problems. But we toe the line of saying, I want to do something. So we have some do somethings for you. The doing of a thing, a deed. So at times we have to get involved there, and we're going to help remove that pressure from your shoulders. So don't think this one is like, I don't want to hear this one. What is he going to call me to do? Let's walk through these interviews. And I think somewhere in here, something will touch your heart from both what Josh said or what Glenn says, or maybe I trip over something that maybe says, yeah, this is for me. There is a next step in this conversation. Thank you for joining us for Hour 8 ACT. 8 hours to choose. Mission1Race loves you, and I'll see you after the videos. All right, we're recording this.
Get those pregame jitters out.
Pregame jitters. Let's go. So, give me your full government name. That's a warm up. You get Josh Fly, J Fly, Stay Fly. What's your government name? Let's go.
Joshua Paul Fly.
That's not. You had to have gone by JP at some point. I mean, no.
Yeah, there's been a few. I was called JP a little bit as a kid, but my family always called me Joshua.
Really?
My friends have always called me Josh, but whenever you get the inverse, if friends call me Joshua, it sounds weird, or if family calls me Josh, it sounds weird.
Yeah.
I can go by both.
So I've never called you either. I've always called you since I heard your name, and I saw how smooth you were, in my opinion. You're a smooth guy, and your last name is Fly. Now, again, here's a cultural IQ competency moment. You can't say Fly around any Black Americans that I know of, and you don't think about the implications of the urban vernacular around Fly. I mean, you do know that, right? You are aware of the implications of the word fly for an African-American Black person. Yes or no?
I am, and I mean, this is like kind of, this encapsulates a little bit of like back in high school, that I forget who the band was, but there was the song out, "You're Pretty Fly for a White Guy."
Yes.
It's a goofy song, but that, you know, that's when it really kind of, it encapsulated my last name among, you know, kind of my high school culture.
That had to be a highlight. That had to be a highlight.
Most definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I've, you know, living in New York City, people have asked me, is that a stage name? I'm like, no, it's my real name. But also people are like, oh, that's such a cool name. And I've always responded, well, I can't take credit for it. You know, it's the name that I was given. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's so funny. Like, you can't take credit for it, and that's humble and right. But we definitely, as humans, are told to take credit for it and judge people based on the other things we've been born as. Isn't that strange? Right? Like, we want props for being from here. We want props for being a male. We want props for being a Hispanic male, a white male, a Black male. And like, we just showed up. You showed up.
And also,
right?
In how those have been taught to inform us about our own self-worth.
Yeah.
You know,
like, on top of that,
for worse.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and that's not a bad intro. I'm gonna have to pause here because this conversation can be so good, and I want to make sure it's looking the way it should. But I think you're warmed up, dude. You're ready. I can see in your eyes.
I don't know. I was nervous.
El Tigre. This is a friend. This is a man I respect. It's a man I know of and don't know everything about. But when I look at you and we talk and so forth, we have been connected from really the first real conversation that I had with you. And the first real conversation I had with you was in the context of us meeting and both serving, and we still serve with World Vision. Our roles have slightly shifted since then. I mean, mine in particular. And you were in Los Angeles visiting. And let's just to speak the truth of it, we were handling business, but my first casual conversation with you over lunch was like, this is 2018, right? It was Mission1Race centered. And I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. And you're probably thinking well, I don't want to guess what were you thinking? Like, what is this? Like, keep it real. Like, what were you thinking?
No, I mean, I was just, I think I was sort of in a posture of admiration. I mean, you were just speaking, you're speaking your truth. You were clearly, it was something that you were sorting through within your own spirit. A quote that I loved my adult life is this idea of real recognizes real. And I think there's something in that shapes the attraction we have to our fellow human beings, to other people. And I think there was an immediate, there was something in our first encounter that just felt like, I was talking to you, or rather you were talking to me, sharing this dream that you were embarking on, just like we'd known each other for years. And so I just felt just a moment of kind of like, this is a long lost friend or a brother, you know, maybe from another life. Yeah. And we united in that moment. So it was kind of one of those things, but just, man, just admiration. It was clearly something big that you were about to embark on, and you were trying to talk to people that you trusted about, like, man, am I stepping in the right direction, and getting, seeking out some maybe affirmation or validation or prayer, just some support in that.
And
so
and
that was.
I wish I was that strategic. I was like you said, I think you carry yourself in a way, and I don't know, I don't know if you know about the steps getting to here, but we've been through 7 other principles, and you know of them. But we went through 7 other principles, and what I feel like you walk in, whether you intentionally do it or not, is a lot of them just organically. Like even in the conversation, seeking to understand, I think you walk like that. It's not in a know-it-all attitude, and even in areas that maybe you're not as familiar with, which this conversation may be one. We are in a conversation of human reconciliation, not just racial reconciliation, but obviously that is where society is in a big way, and where we launched this 8 hours to choose out of the 4th of July, intentionally out of saying, hey, let's have a new type of experience in this birthday America, almost like a human birthday, saying, wow, this 244th year, we can be a different country. And we can look back and go like, remember when we were a lot more hateful? I guess they did do that back in 2020. Like that's that's the kind of dreamer that I somewhat am. And then we will move to forgiveness, and then relate and heal and connect and reconcile and just love conversation, but all in the context of like human reconciliation, not just a romantic love or whatever. And that's the same thing we find ourselves in this act, right? We find ourselves in this final hour of taking action, and it can mean so much, and it can really carry this weight, right? And yes, I felt called to like this 250 miles, launching a nonprofit or launching a movement, and 6 missions and stuff. But also, I think God kind of met me how I roll. Like it wasn't like, that's kind of where I was a small guy saying I'm getting a D1 scholarship to football. People laughed at my face. And I did that. People said I'm going to be an engineer, and then God blessed me to be able to work hard, and I did. So there was a pattern where he's kind of showing me kind of like a David and Goliath thing. So I don't want to act like it came out of nowhere, me trying to do large in life things, but never around that area, and never publicly, and never in that form. I'm turning the corner to this to where I'm like, but Josh, when I was introduced to you informally, you were on a treadmill running 50 miles, I think. What was that all about? So like, I think also you weren't completely thrown off, because that's not something people just do.
That's interesting. I don't know if I knew that was the first time that you and I kind of met virtually or whatever was.
Yeah, that's the first time I really was like, this dude, Josh Fly is a little bit crazy too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got to give credit where credit is due, in that like all of these big sort of ambitions and dreams I've had around, putting my skin in the game and putting my toe to the line and running races or hiking mountains. Those were all other people's ideas. And so the founder of Team World Vision, who you and I both know, good friend, somebody that's inspired both of us, Michael Chitwood.
Yeah.
Put a dream in my heart years ago. It was just some random conversation about this race called Comrades, which I'm sure we'll get to. We'll circle to that at some point. But then Brian Fraser. I mean, I was praying. God was stirring something in my spirit during a season in life where I was really trying to figure out how to bring this conviction I had about bringing hope and resources and fundraising to, in particular, kids on the margins around the world, but families and people on the margins around the world in developing countries. So much of what I see with Mission1Race, just to riff on this for a second, that I think is so important, is that some of us who have looked beyond our own neighborhoods, our own backyards, our own cities, to these other places where our hearts have been broken for other fellow human beings, that's a worthy cause. But there's a tension in which, like, how can we collectively serve in all capacities, both local and global? And I love that about Mission1Race, because it's bringing these different threads together, where I do believe it's a platform that can focus on the whole world,
Yeah.
both local and global. But Brian Fraser, I remember watching him. He ran on a treadmill for 50 miles before I did. He put the idea in my heart.
Got it.
I remember watching him on Facebook Live, and something started to happen. In the very next morning, I went in New York City, where I live, where I reside. I'm in upstate right now. You can kind of see the woods behind.
That's awesome.
But the very next day, I went to this class called the Mile High Run Club. It's just it's like a group running class. They have a bunch of Woodway treadmills, and I went to that class with a couple of friends the day after watching Brian Fraser run on a treadmill for Team World Vision, and I said, no, please. It's one of maybe 3 times in my life that I would say that I heard from God. It wasn't an audible voice. I felt visceral stirring in my spirit that was like, Josh, you need to do this, because the pieces kind of fell in place. I watched Brian, and then I went to this class the next day that was a treadmill-based running class on these really beautiful Woodway treadmills, which, by the way, is like running on a cloud. Maybe not for 50 miles, but God was just like, Josh, you got to do this. And I didn't want to, which I've heard other people say that. I think I've heard you say that. Like, I don't want to do that, but I felt convicted that I needed to do it. And so yeah, the pieces fell into place, and I ended up running 2 years in a row. I did 50 epic miles, which was the name of my treadmill event, but it was for child sponsorship for World Vision. And yeah.
So let's continue on that parallel, and then we'll dive in, because I want some specifics even around this area, though, because I know you and I have connected personally, and this season of unrest has kind of, I guess, caused you to hearken back to some conversations with friends, to kind of look at your own life, though you walk out a very, I would say, inclusive life, but there was something in you that shifted in a way that you said, reflection wise, is there more I can do in this conversation? Just as the voice, and maybe let me know later if I'm misinterpreting it. Actually, let's go there now, and then we'll kind of talk about where I feel like the handoff, but with World Vision, and why I think it was an important, I wouldn't say precursor, because I'm still serving there, right? But important precursor in terms of planting in my heart the fact that there is no cavalry coming. That's the first thing. Like we are the cavalry. We want to change this world, mount up, right? That sort of thing. That action, again, we're in the midst of. And yeah, and the second thing is, like, the chips are stacked against us. There's hundreds of millions of people, children without clean water, and people without clean water, and without enough food, without shelter. Look at the parallel. There's racism all around us. There's sexism all around us. There's hate all around us. People are getting lynched. People are getting hate. So what do? Bow beneath that? Those are the options, right? Somebody else is coming. Things are screwed up. It's too much for me. I shrink beneath that. Or we help one. Or we speak in love to one person.
Yeah.
We love on one child. We love, and we do that. And you get what I mean? That chipping away absolutely was fired in me, refined in me from serving in a cause that is a dreamer's cause, that is a larger than life, that the odds out they're against us. The odds are against us in extreme poverty, one expression of the folks in the margins of our world, and the chips are stacked against us in this conversation of this hate and this dissension and separation, segregation. I'm not dumb. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not that much of a dreamer where I'm saying, like, I don't tangibly see the systemic issues and how deep and how it's passed on, how the thought is there, how from any side of the conversation there's misunderstanding, right? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I'm just extremist. I can't accept just accepting it. And that's not from an anger place. I can't accept that I don't just try and encourage others to try. Because that one child, it does matter too. We didn't get the 700 million, but maybe we got 10 million. We didn't change every single person's heart away from racism, but guess what? That one person now, looks at this person as a human. We win. That one person is going to treat that woman with the respect that she does. We win. That one person is not going to attack this person for living their life with the attractions, right, and their lifestyle, and they're not going to be dehumanized and oppressed because of it. We win in that one. I didn't plan on going on that tangent like that, but that's why I know your heart, because there's certain people that completely bow under it, right, and give up, and then there's folks that goes, I'll try. So why are you wired that way? Man, I guess that's like, what is it? Just accept it, like everyone else accepts it. Just accept it.
Yeah. Why am I wired that way? I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm thinking as you're talking. One, which is a bit strange for me, I'm like feeling myself getting a little bit emotional as you were talking, but to connect, a big part of my story has been how I've been activated to be on mission through World Vision, right? And just to draw a parallel in something that I'm hearing you say and something that I've heard as a call to my own life. I mean, it's always been, I don't know what put this into my heart, but I know that it's been there since I can remember. That I have always wanted to live a life of meaning. My greatest sort of curiosity, question, or burden in life is, God, give me a purpose that matters. Let my life matter. Let me live my life at a worthy cause, like whatever that means, right? And I've heard other people, pray that same prayer of just saying like, God, whatever it is that you want me to do, just let me have the ears to hear it and the courage to act. Actually, that's to act on that. I've been worried my whole life that I wouldn't have the courage to say yes. And I continue to fear that. So my greatest fear in life is to miss the call to fulfill my purpose through my life. And so I've felt this my whole life. And so, gosh, when I started doing things that were driven from a place of my faith, from a Christian faith, an upbringing that I was blessed to have, but it shaped me as a person. That was a starting point. And then Team World Vision invited me into doing really neat things on behalf of people. But Richard Stearns in the book, The Hole in the Gospel, there's a really interesting point that kind of summarizes it all, is that when we advocate for children around the world and say, like, there's children dying, we can give a bunch of fact points that are heartbreaking, although they don't resonate with people. When we take somebody on a vision trip to meet communities and meet sponsored children, it changes their heart. It gives them a personal narrative that they can come back and share that with friends, family, colleagues. But what Richard Stearns says is that what oftentimes happens is there's a narrative or a story we tell ourselves that they're not my kids, therefore they're not my problem. Yeah. And the point that he's making that was just so compelling, I think anybody that's read that book was probably in tears reading that. Well, actually, as somebody of faith, a believer in God, that God is saying, well, they're all our children. We are all together in this. And that's the exact same thing that I believe when we met in LA for the first time, person to person, face to face, had lunch out there on the,
stoop, like the wall,
whatever.
Wall.
That's basically what you invited me into in this. The idea you're saying is that we're all God's people, and what can we do about that? And I just feel, I feel a lot of things. There's something to double back on also that you mentioned a moment ago, that what is it in this particular time, in this particular season? What are some of the things that I'm experiencing? And one is that having been super blessed with a multitude of different friendships from different backgrounds, whether it's country of origin, whether it's sexual identity, whether it's faith, or atheism, whatever. I've told many people the biggest blessing of my life has been my friendships. They've saved my life. They've blessed my life. They've journeyed with me through the highs and the lows. They are God's blessing to my life. And I've just been, I've lived in some cool places. I lived in Memphis, Tennessee out of college. And I've got to tell you, as a sheltered man from a very homogenous place in the mountains west of Denver in Colorado, to live in Memphis, Tennessee.
Wow.
See the disparity between, I was shocked because I wasn't given a proper education about the history of Black America growing up. The only thing I knew about it was my football coach and his two sons, who are my friends, and one other friend of mine who was African American.
Wow.
Other than that, I was in a very homogenous, pretty much all white community.
Yeah.
Middle class. But moving from Colorado to Memphis, Tennessee, quite honestly, I remember one night in particular, Beale Street, which is there was a big divide between white and black on Beale Street. You crossed over a certain block and it was all white bars and clubs, and you crossed over the other side, it was pretty much predominantly all black African-American bars and
crazy.
And I just was startled by it. And so that was my first real experience seeing that existed in the world today. That was back in like 2005. And I was just startled by that because in my mind, that was a thing of the past, whatever that may have meant. Fast forwarding to then, I lived in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. I saw more homelessness in Washington, D.C. than anywhere else I've ever been. And I just couldn't understand. Our nation's capital, however, I would walk by, men and women that I ultimately grew friendships with on my way to and from work in the morning. I was personal training on Capitol Hill, and I would walk by homeless people, and it was just crazy to me. And then I moved to New York City, and New York City, I met my first openly gay friend. I met, people from the Muslim faith. I have friends from just different backgrounds, different upbringings, different socioeconomic, and I was just exposed to things that I never knew I needed to be exposed to, but have been blessed by those encounters and friendships. And so to bring this all to one place, what I've realized in the last couple of months in particular is a couple of my friends, a few particular people that I've been in conversations with over the years. I went back to one of them and was like, I had this realization that he had delivered to me. Maybe not all the answers, but a lot of the answers to the questions I was seeking. He had delivered those to me in the form of like an encouragement or a book. And Rich Rel, if I'm being honest, I didn't connect the dots on how important it was, because it's something that I've been able to turn off and on in my own life.
Yeah.
I know
it's almost like you had no apologies. I've done plenty of talking, no jokes in the chat. I've done plenty of talking of these hours, and even in this conversation, keep going. I need you to land the plane because you're having a moment. I think if you allow me to say this, where you actually became tangibly aware of a side benefit of some of the privilege that you have. When we have privilege in different areas, and when it's ethnic privilege in this country, you can pick up the conversation around reconciliation or not. And
That's
really,
right.
it really has not that much effect on it until it becomes personal. And that's until it drives home. And that's not a judgment to you, J Fly, Stay Fly, at all. The humility in even you saying that is setting people free. This conversation we're having is setting people free, because it's not about when or how we decide on, wait a second, I don't think this is okay. It's about that decision happens, and then we start walking, crawling, shuffling towards that direction, and using whatever means we have to seek understanding and go through these principles we're talking about. And it doesn't always look the same. And that's where we're going to, I'm not going to cut you off, you stuff to finish, but then we're going to turn the plane where there's a couple of things that we are able to do as this movement that you've helped with as well. So let's just close the gap right there. Just you having this journey, and I think God intentionally letting you go through a homogenous upbringing, and then slowly but surely. And I had a very similar experience dipping you. I was dipped a little bit earlier. Let's call that a dipping into cultural buckets and pots, right? It's a little dipping. You're like, whoa, I never experienced that before, or that person before. And if we don't fight it, but seek to understand it, there's something that opens up in our heart, I think. It's not about us assimilating to anything or even changing our core values, but there's something that opens up in our heart, because once those relationships happen, Josh, once those friendships happen, you can no longer, let me tell you what I bet you can no longer do. Say, all people of this orientation are like this. That's ridiculous. I got a friend that says all Black people are like this. All Hispanic people are like this. All homeless people are like this. No, you have friendships and relationships, right? That force you, even though it's hard work, right, to go person by person. That's the hard work we got to do, right? Person by person.
It is. And again, I go back to this idea that relationships have been the biggest lesson and opportunity and blessing, all packaged into one. And for me, and the hope that I have for everybody is that we all, look, not everybody even has the privilege to live these different places. I've had the freedom to kind of pick my own destiny. And God has met me in that space by delivering some really neat and breaking and eye-opening experiences and friendships. But as I look to that moment that you're pushing at me in, is that I was heartbroken to realize that I dismissed, and I wasn't aware of it at the time. I'm aware of it now, so much so, and this is not me feeling bad for myself at all. It's me coming to terms with the blindness that I inherited because of my own privilege. And to have that revealed is, not only is it humbling, but it's freeing for me, because now I see the world with just a little, just even this much more light. I have so much further to go. But I was able to turn back to a friend of mine and say, look, I'm really sorry that I didn't know how important it could have been. I mean, he asked me, he didn't ask me. We always talked about books. We've talked about relationships and love and the differences in people, and that we celebrate that, you know. And he recommended a book by James Baldwin to me. And this, I'm like, for me, this is before the documentary came out, which I believe was last year. He was referring me to James Baldwin he was referring me to James Baldwin back in like 2013. And I know James Baldwin as an author and as a, you know, civil rights activist has been, you know, an influencer for a long, long time. But I first heard the name James Baldwin years ago. And guess what? I didn't even consider reading it until this year. And that is a failing for myself, in that, like, I could have been 5, 6, 7 years further into my awakening and my understanding. I'm talking about somebody that I, as a friend, multiple people that I love them as people, as friends, family, yet I have not been able to walk in the shoes of some of the folks in my own life.
Can I
Yeah.
interrupt?
Please, I mean,
No, because I have to. Like you did it. I did it to you. Supposedly, you almost did it to me. That's why I paused for a second, because I don't really think you know, or I even fully know. I feel the love of God in this conversation, and what I want to pause and do is say, right now, we're laying down the shame that you're possibly even entertaining, of timing, of why, of blindness. That's not for anybody to carry in any area of our life. But the conviction, the healthy conviction, the healthy awakening is what we want to grab and share it in our area and how. And sometimes that's just in straight action. And they say, Josh, there's something different in the conversation. You don't turn into to Malcolm X tomorrow. You're not Josh X, if you will. You hear what I'm saying? You're you on the journey that God has you on, but now you've seen a piece of it, an aspect of it. I challenge people to look at Peter in the Bible in Acts 10. And you tell me how much God loves him, who he founded the church on, but went to him and said, I've got a beef. I've got a bone to pick with you, Peter. You're being prejudiced. You're only leaning into folks that have the same ethnic background as you, the same religious background as you, and this Holy Spirit's for everyone. And he lovingly takes them through some stuff, puts them in a trance. I can't make up the word. Puts them in a trance. A love trance. Wakes up, gives them an experience, and he makes one of the most profound statements in the gospel, in the early church, in the founding of the church. He says, God is not a respecter of persons. The Holy Spirit's for everyone. We're all the same. In his eyes, all people are the same. That's an awakening. That's nothing to be apologetic about. So we're going to shift here, because the shift becomes the true story. The shift is the action towards that way. Because I was closed-hearted and closed-minded to any child in extreme poverty. And I tell that story in 2016. Not once did I ever shed a tear or have any moment of awakening, because I grew up somewhat in a challenged financial status, and I didn't understand the difference between poverty and extreme poverty. And I learned, and I remember that moment I had. So whether it's an area of ethnicity, sexuality, of gender, of people's past and our judgments, that we have that moment, just thank God we have that moment. And I did. Dude, I wept, because he showed me how I prayed for my own children that I have 3 of when they were in an incubator, and prayed for their life with every ounce of energy I had. And he showed me that the other parents in these countries are praying the same exact way, but their children are dying, and oftentimes no one's coming. It's okay. And what he's showing us and brought us together as brothers and said, you know what? Josh has this background experience. Richwell, you have this background experience. You're going to meet in this way, and you're going to show the both and of these ministries. You're going to show the both and of before and after I touch your heart, and you're going to guide people into one of the most inclusive, most ridiculous, but awesome, like these experiences there is. And so we are going, so we're unapologetically saying that this act is centered around, we maybe have some way besides just getting involved. And we're going to talk about Comrades 2021 at the end of this, like we said, because I want to bless the ministry and what you're moving forward with World Vision, just like mine and my senior partnerships role. But we are here with the blessing of, by the way, with a partnership, by the way, with a relationship with Mission1Race and World Vision, saying right now, what we're talking about is domestically the fact that people are in the margins right in our neighborhoods for all of these different false degrees of separation, of one of which is racial reconciliation and otherwise, right? Vocation, location, education, history, background, gender identity, sexuality, all of these different areas, and they're listed. And I teach them as we go through the curriculum. And we're saying we have an event that brings awareness, that brings people together in community, and it's pretty freaking epic. and it's going to happen in December. Virtually, partially, or virtually, totally, doesn't matter. Well, God knows that, but we're walking towards it, and it's going to pay homage to the calling that you heard me talk about. I ran up the coast without even knowing the coast or having a history of understanding of the missions, because I grew up in Chicago. He set up the race. He set up the organization, the strategy behind it. I'm telling you, I can't make this up. Don't have the background, don't have the experience, don't have the know-how, but he brought people, and he's been bringing people. And we're going to do it again. December 6th, we're going to launch it. People on day one are going to go either as an individual, as a team, as a relay. They're going to run a day, they're going to run a leg, or they're going to run the whole thing, right? And we're going to be bringing awareness that everyone gets the love.
That's right.
Everyone gets the love. For whatever years I have left, I will die with that on my lips, and I won't believe anyone that tells me otherwise. Right? We're like, God sort out all the other complications, right? The implications of this and that. We're not here to judge, and we're here to forgive. And if not, we don't get forgiveness ourselves. So you have allowed me to tap into your skills and background, fitness, breathing, just being a legit dude, this experience God had on your heart and life, and you're our volunteer coach, putting together these training plans. I mean, honestly, you were inspired, but you're like, hey man, let me give you a vision for maybe like you finishing the race and not dying. Like, it's epic that you suffered. It's epic that you suffered. But for others and or yourself, how about we try to finish this thing standing up? And I remember this moment. This is a real moment. We were talking in the gym. And not that I'm a glutton for punishment or want to be a martyr, but I was prepared again to like, I'm going to suffer my way through this. And you gave me a vision that maybe can give you a training plan. I can't guarantee anything. And like, and lead you towards something that maybe you can finish it. And maybe the blessing and the testimony is finishing it in a group, in a setting with folks, and standing up and maybe even thriving. Am I making this up? So thank you. I don't know if you're gonna say some words as the volunteer coach and training plan. We're defining. How do you feel even about that and about anything I said? I know I said a lot, but
yeah, I mean, it's funny. I remember that conversation that we had. We've had a couple of different iterations of the same conversation. One thing I've been struggling about. Struggling is maybe the wrong one thing that I've been, trying to have a conversation about for a while is this idea of willful suffering, meaning like being a martyr to some sort of goal or purpose. Mm-hmm. I think there's a space for that in all of our lives. However, it's kind of there's enough suffering in the world that if we can minimize suffering in our own lives, maybe that saves some energy to help other people with their suffering that they're not doing intentionally or on purpose. And so having come from a background, I've been in the health and fitness industry for 20 years. I mean, it's crazy.
Wow, that's crazy.
And I'm still so far from knowing even like this much of what I'd like to, but that's the life journey, right? About all of this.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's an important season in all of our lives where we need to, again, spend ourselves at a worthy cause. Things should be tough because that's going to bring sometimes the best out of us. But if we look beyond that, and I bring it more to like design, right? Like God designed us perfectly, each and every one of us, the way we're made. And some of us have a greater opportunity to tap into fully optimizing this amazing creative design of the human body. And what would it look like if we became healthier as a result of saying yes to some of these things like Mission1Race? What if it built community? What if we were able to run the race with health and vibrance and a smile on our face? Wouldn't we then have more energy to talk about the purpose versus just struggling through it. And it's not to say that points and moments in time may not be challenging, but what would it look like to cross the finish line vibrant and healthy?
I love it. I think
I don't know if I'm encapsulating that conversation, but there's something in that for me, and it's coming from this background in health and exercise because I want to meet people in their lives. Fitness has been a doorway, sort of a window or an invitation into people's lives, because you get to know a lot about people when they embark on a journey of running a race or getting healthy, getting fit. It reveals a lot of what goes on within a person. And so it's a great place to meet people. I love the idea of using this as a platform to help invite people into healthier, more vibrant living where they can maximize the design that they've been given, the blessing that they've been given. So
I think I know I had no intention of this being an annual event. I don't know if you even know that. This was supposed to be a one-time thing, of which that I actually finished, which again, I publicly say again, it's always a misnomer. I technically physically failed, but I believe it was divinely purposed for me to be a seed and planted, and then the journey team was birthed, and the year 2 of this epic idea and concept is even more grand than I could imagine. And we already have people registered and so forth. So what I would say is this: this parallels the action that we must take, and it becomes almost a demonstration of itself. Mission1Race, the Journey 2020 is a demonstration of love. It's a demonstration of oneness. Every single person that gives to, every single person that does a leg of it, and we have legs as short as 5 miles, as long as 250 miles, because that's you doing the whole thing, or relaying a day. It's a demonstration of oneness. And it's a platform for ourselves, but any other non-profit or church to be able to help lean into and give into the missions that God has them on, because we're all on the same mission, because oneness fuels it all. I say this in the documentary: oneness will ruin your life in the best possible way, because you no longer can you just walk past people without wondering, like, how did they get there? Is there something I could do? Understand it. It'll make you pause in the midst of statements and saying, like, am I speaking life or death into this person's life and experience, even if it's one of torment, right? So just to focus on the parallel of this Journey 2020 and the other part of Mission1Race, you see them all working in tangent, because we're going to be using our movement and messaging leading up to it to invite folks into it and be sharing the content that we're creating. The event itself is bringing folks in as relay teams of different walks of life, of different faiths, of different abilities. That's another false degree of separation. You mentioned that a bit before. It's a privilege. Ability is privilege. Physical ability is privilege, and we don't often see it that way. There's children that wish they could have walked and ran ever, or let alone still, right? Or eyesight and these other physical ailments and so forth. And then you're going to see next to that is we do teach during the race and also launch these one communities in this curriculum similar to what we're talking about. So I see it in parallel. I feel this is a physical demonstration and the greatest physical, I think, a way that humanity can come out of this season that we're going through as well, in this pandemic and in this racial tension, and an extension of the 8 days or 8 hours to choose, maybe the 8 months to choose. It's not quite 8 months, but almost like 7, something to that extent, to where we're making that happen. So is there anything that you would want to say for folks that are considering it, for the inclusivity in the plans that we're coming up with, the training plans and that mentality, or anything else? I'm hoping for you to land the plane there, and I'll give details on other part of this, and we'll figure out what we're going to keep in this. We went a lot longer than I thought, but it was a lot better than I thought too. Not that I had low expectations. I just feel like there was just like, there's just parts of connection that you couldn't write on a piece of paper if you wanted to. Right. And nor should we. There's just intentional moments. But if we are just to lean into that, I guess articulate whatever part of the journey 2020 and that piece of it that you are leaning into. Shout out to Ryan, doing a lot of work on the actual logistics of it as well. But this part is very important. We're going to parallel this training plan, training our bodies, as we're also training our hearts, our minds, our souls. And then we're going to peacefully demonstrate that we are willing to suffer a bit for each other. And there is always some form of suffering and love, but that doesn't mean we have to stay in that place, is the hope. Yeah.
Okay, so I will do my best to sort of respond to some of what you're asking or inviting me into. I think one thing that I feel compelled by your invitation to be a part of this at any capacity. It reminded me, I told you this earlier on, but it reminded me of a lesson I had heard many years ago. Sort of as we walk through life, how can we be a blessing to the world around us? And it was framed like, you know, sometimes when teachers or preachers or parents are teaching, they frame things like, oh, let's use the same, what is it? Same letter.
Yeah.
So like, I remember it being your talent, your time, or your treasure. And so I think that as you sort of invited me into Mission1Race and what this means and what it looks like, it was really important to me to ask you, can we make it totally inclusionary? Meaning that, is there even a pivot or modification or personalization that I will carry some of the weight of that if it means that there's somebody that, you know, like I thought of Achilles, right? This team of athletes that may have some sort of disability, right? Like, yes, it should invite them. I think about my dad, who's 82 and really on lockdown right now in a assisted living. Like, how can he say yes and be a part of this? I think of someone in a wheelchair. I think of different communities of people that, you know, it's just like, let's figure out a way that everybody can say yes. God is love, right? Like, so let us be one together in this, that everybody's invited. So one party, right? So for training specifically, kind of coming back to, or for everybody, I think of it as time, talent, or treasure. If you yourself is captivated by the invitation, I would say, look, think about, are you somebody that can participate? Like, you feel like that call to like go and toe the line next to, you know, our brothers and sisters as we move up the coast.
Yeah.
Are you somebody that, you know, feels more compelled to offer your talents? Like, do you have a skill or a trade or a contribution that you think would offer something? Or, you know, your treasure. And treasure can be a multitude of things, I think, in this form. Like, can you support financially? And there's probably a few other T's that we could add, but like, come one, come all. Like, if we can all find a way to say together that we're going to do this together, no matter what background, if there, you know, there's no limitations. And so from a training perspective, all those that say yes, regardless of their current capacity, we either meet you in that so that you can train to do your best, or we will modify to the circumstances of where you are. If that means doing laps in your little apartment with your walker, if it means, you know, standing up and down off your couch, if it means going out and doing something virtually, running on a treadmill, I don't know. But so that was an important thing to me, to include everybody. And then the second thing, just from a design standpoint, I mean, this is going to be tough for a lot of people. That I want people to be challenged by it, but I also want people to maybe tap into something they didn't know existed.
Yeah.
That if you meet yourself on the Mission1Race course, whether it's virtually or there in person, that something would be revealed about, oh my gosh, I was made for more than I thought. And I think that we can kind of come in touch with those things through training programs, through spiritual disciplines. And so the training program is written both with an accumulation of miles and volume, and there's going to be some different ones, like you said, for the full stage race, right? But then different breakdowns of that. If you're on a relay team, if you're doing a one-day event, if you're doing a half marathon distance or whatever it is, that there's the mileage volume increase, but then we're going to offer some breath work, some physical practice, some movement, cross training that will fall in line to help equip you. But just kind of offering some of the textures of health and wellness so that the journey is in and of itself revealing who you are and who you were created to be. And maybe you won't only meet yourself on that course in a new way, but it will open your eyes to how you can contribute to the ongoing conversation about oneness. I don't know. So.
No, I think you crushed it. I think you crushed it. And what I thought about when you were saying it was even becoming one kind of with yourself. There's that alignment even within ourselves. Like you just said, like this, we talk about that loving God and loving others as ourselves, and that self-love even being a part of the social factor for change, believe it or not. I talked about that in just the last 8 hours to choose. That really does affect how we're able to love others, is that self acceptance and love. So in this court of pushing yourself, I think about just a bunch of the elements that'll happen there. So let me be clear. I'll get into more details later, but just to get tangible, we are literally saying, in terms of just miles and kilometers, that we have race days where you would be welcome to get out there, because we have relay teams. Up to 4 people can run per day, and the shortest leg or the shortest day you have is 30 miles. So in that day, if you do the math, divide it by 4, as little as less than 10 miles that you can walk or run. Yes, we're going to have time limits, whatever. So it is obtainable. So it's going from something that could only one person or a handful of people, period, ever go over 6 days and 250 miles with ultra marathons. That's not inclusive, but that's okay. That's where we started, to where now we're saying, okay, is it a day? Is it just that 30-mile day yourself? Is it a relay team doing the whole thing? Is it a relay team doing a day? Or are you just a relay leg doing one leg on our day 4 across LA for 8 miles? You know what I mean? And that really does. Or I haven't hit the first, or you're in your backyard, because again, it's not safe for you to travel it or go wherever, or you're doing, we make up some calisthenics for you to do this. You're down with Mission1Race, or your involvement is, we're going out, you're sending out invites and texts and emails. We're being that serious that the physicality of this, even in itself, we don't want to be variable. We want to make room for those that may want to take on the physical epicness of this. And we'll have all of us on the same course, physically and or virtually. And it is growing as we speak. And Josh has put his heart into it. Stay fly, as I call him. Josh, stay fly. And yeah, man, this is going to be, even if this episode is longer, it's worth it, because I need folks to know that we're talking about this is one possible expression in tandem with, or a starting point for you in this conversation of human reconciliation as well. Just you being associated with and putting yourself out there and sharing it or supporting it is showing that, hey, I am a little insecure, or I feel like Josh, that in my life, maybe there's less inclusivity even included in your story, where you haven't even had those relationships yet. Still come. Maybe you're sneaking and watching this. I'm being real, because you're around folks that absolutely still feel like, I don't know, there is superior race or pro cons, or pro this and pro whatever, and for some reason in your heart, you're like, I don't know if I believe that. Come on. Like, step out into this event. You're going to be warmly welcome with no judgment and so forth. Or visit as we launch later after this, our one communities where you can visit one of those, have a conversation, learn a bit. We're in this for the long haul. We're in this for the long haul. It's not a right now, put up or shut up, right? Get with this, or we don't think you're real. You're not deep enough. You're not woke. That's not what this is. And we're not even stopping at ethnic or racial reconciliation. Everyone that finds themselves in the margins is where we're looking. Listen to the vision statement: abolish inequality. We in World Vision, just to parallel it one more time, we are seeking to get fullness of life and health and welfare for every single child. That is absolutely the vision of World Vision. Just so you know, like, not most, not a majority, every single one. So unapologetically, Mission1Race, we are seeking to abolish inequality, to where each person is even treated based on their own merit and their character and decisions and so forth. And still, even when they're corrected, that does not change their intrinsic dignity and value that God has given them, right? But nonetheless, we're not prejudging that before their mouth or anything else happens. So that's where we're going. So here's the deal, Josh. I'm gonna put it out there. Stay fly. At first I said yes. I'm still a yes. And so June of 2021, the plan is to go to Hills of South Africa on the behalf, right? Which I expect.
That's right.
But I'm putting it out there. I'm putting you on blast, and I'm keeping this part. So just so you know, just being straight up. You come out and join part of this. You know, a day is fine, because it's not fair to do 250 to 57. I think Comrades is, but you beat me out on the course at some point. I'll beat you out of the course. We'll do it that way. I love the causes. I mean, you gotta scratch.
Yeah.
Even if it's virtually. Like, I'm just saying. I'm putting you out
man,
there.
yes, you can count me in on that. I'm committed to the process, man. And if that means that you are going to come with me to South Africa and the team,
yes,
next June, as we go back for the 100th anniversary of Comrades, it's a big deal. By the way, you and I both know, not for today, another call, that race in and of itself has a tremendous story.
Amazing story of redemption.
And it's worth sharing at some point. But yes, I will be at Mission1Race to ensure that you are coming to Comrades 2021. So yes, you and I, we have that. It's like the
virtual handshake.
The virtual handshake
deal. On the next part, I'll talk through the three events I'm leaning into, but and Comrades is capping it off. It's capping it off. Mission1Race is kicking it off. LA Marathon 2021. I'm LA ambassador this year. Is going to be right in the middle of the sandwich. And then we're going to South Africa. So meet me on the coast of California, meet me on the streets of LA, and then meet me in the streets of, I think, are we going Pietermaritzburg to Durban or Durban to Pietermaritzburg? I don't know which one this year.
It's a down year. So yes, it's Pietermaritzburg down into Durban.
Running for oneness through all of it. Because all of these races, all of these epic things, some of the best people I've ever met in my life, willing to lay down their comfort, their body, and train. Especially the charity runners. Shout out to them. It's Team World Vision. Shout out to them. And again, every single potential Mission1Race runner, give it or spectathlete or give donor or whatever the case may be. We're taking action and we're doing whatever little part we can. And the rest, I think God is going to put his super on our natural, and we will look back in this very few moments in our life. Like you said, Josh, pull it full circle. I guarantee you this much: we'll never be ashamed of speaking up, saying every single person gets to love. We're uniquely the same, right? And living our life for love, mission, and oneness. You almost can't go wrong in that. You know, life is not easy. None of us are perfect. But when we make these decisions, doing it for the children that are suffering, doing it for folks in the margins of our lives, those are smile points. Those are stories to tell grandchildren. There's blessings in that. We don't do it for that, but it is, you know?
Well, and you said today, this conversation is about ACT, right? And just something that I kind of am feeling come alive within my own heart right now is that idea of one way you can act is by inviting someone else in, right? Doing that is in and of itself an act. Because the truth is, most of the things that happen in our lives that are worth telling, are either the big call from like, God is like, you wrecked your heart, Rich Rel, you're going to do this. But look at all these other friends and strangers along the way that somehow they look you in the eye and they invite you into something and say, hey, you can do this. So not only do I feel it compelling to say, if you feel that stirring, say yes to it, because it can change your life, but also don't be afraid to invite others to join you in the party, because I think for you, you set out on something that you thought was a personal calling, when the reality of it is, or what it seems to be, is that God was not doing this for you. He was doing it for a lot more people, for a community, for
Humanity.
much bigger than you could have imagined. So let's all be open to how we can invite other people in to the callings of our own lives so that we can do it together. And that in and of itself is a form of act as well. Activate someone else,
Those are closing words. Josh, stay fly, my brother. See you on the course. And before that.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Love you, brother.
Love you, man.
We're live. Glenn McWhorter. Am I saying that even right? Is it McWhorter?
You did. It was perfect. McWhorter. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the deal. We are a day away, or the day of, when this is going to be playing, of the official public first time ever opening and launch of Mission1Race's The Journey 2020. And you didn't even know it at the time. You were just following what God told you, or you're going to share that with us. And you were the first ever registrant of the official race. Not when I did it in 2019. Number one, how does that make you feel? And number two, why, and anything else you want to share. So really this is your moment to invite, to love on, to speak, to prophesy, whatever. Talk to us.
Well, you don't really have to go over what's going on in our culture, because everybody knows, and so just as this context in America is very heavy. I think especially for folks that are in the church, because the church has been persecuted for thousands of years, right? And has persisted and persevered through all of that. And of all people in the world, right, that should have answers for the questions we're asking right now, it should be the church. And unfortunately, some of us find ourselves in places where we just don't have the answers. Maybe by, because of how you were raised, and you were not aware of things that were going on, or because of, just different dynamics, different cultures. It's real easy to kind of be set in your ways at church, So this year I started a Doctor of Ministry at Fuller Theological Seminary, and one of the books that was assigned is called The Cross and the Lynching Tree. And it draws this parallel between Jesus being basically kind of the first person in Christian history to be lynched, right? The religious leaders were against him. The Romans were against him. The people were against him.
Yes.
And he was unrighteously hung up, right? And this guy, the author's name is Cole. I can't think of Cone, I think is the last name. We'll find that. But he basically draws this comparison, and then he he shows how in America from like the 1880s or so through the 1940s, there were all of these, horrendous acts against, Black men and women. And, so it just kind of opened my mind up to some of the history that we're still dealing with. And that's when it kind of hits you hard, right? You're like, but what can I do? I'm a middle class, social economic, person. I don't have a voice into this is kind of the first lie maybe that you hear is like, who's going to listen to me about this, right? What can I do to help? And then I think the Lord just told me that, maybe you don't have a voice yet, but you can be part of the community as the community is going through it. And that's when I don't know, God just put 2 and 2 together and said Mission1Race. And, every year I do a marathon or 2, and I talk to my wife about it. And I got to tell you this, the shortest conversation ever about, well, should I do this with my wife? She's like, yeah, do it. And we're in the car, and I'm already looking up the web page and finding, how to sign up and getting my credit card out and doing it all in the car. And it was just kind of one of those things. I had the most just confidence and just trust. And, then I talk to you and you're saying, yeah, you're going to do the whole 250 miles. I'm like, whatever, God, whatever you have, we're going to do it, And so that's kind of just, how things have kind of just pushed me along. And I tell you that I think one of the most beautiful things is to just drop the insecurity. Granted, like you said during the hour 7 today, hey, we're building this plane while it's flying. I love that. I'm a church planter at heart, and things are going to be messy as you're building them, and you're not going to do things the right way. And we don't know how many miles we're going to run this December, but we're just going to give that all up to God and see what happens. So there's maybe a short answer.
We're probably going to cut there. But if not, I have to tell you this. You started off with the fact that the lynchings and the murder that was going on that time. And I'll be honest with you, I never thought I would see another time in our history paralleling those moments. But I'm telling you, at the height of what was happening in this country just a few weeks ago, and even the residuals, almost the aftershocks of it, where we're hearing stories of people being hung in Palmdale. They're being hung and not knowing what's going on. Even the fact that, like, I'm not trying to be dramatic, like, it's boggling my mind. Watch this though. That compared to you stepping out and just obeying that unction speaks to how you think it's an insignificant potential step. Glenn, you lit a fire in this movement. I'm not exaggerating. You can talk to our events coordinator about it. And it was like, wait a second, because you got to understand, the first year I put this out there in 2019, there was still a registration. Guess how many people signed up, Glenn? None. Right. That's the story that's not popular. Mm-hmm. Not a person signed up. Mm-hmm. So for you to not even know, and for that extreme to be happening, all the doubts in me, all the vulnerability, and you and I not even in recent history, we knew of each other, and you are signing up and posting it, it lit urgency, it lit hope, it lit getting our ducks in order, our lives in order. And then it just, beyond that, the way you've served and been a sounding board and ideas. And even in this moment, dude, I'm telling you right now, you're going to set some people free from the lie and shame of why haven't I, what can't I, and all of that, just like you said. And we're just going to open up our hand, right? And just say, we're walking this way. Jesus is that way. Love is that way.
Yeah.
And this is that. That's it. We don't, like, we're right. The mission mobile might come up and get us all. That's going to be our support vehicle.
Yeah.
But we're going. Right.
Right.
And that's our loaves and fishes, right? So thank you so much.
You bet.
Yeah, I love you, man.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot more that we could talk about too.
Oh, we're going to.
Just as I'm thinking about this more and more, and I mean, the Lord has always made me interested in the marathon, just as this kind of amazing, significant thing, you know, that ordinary people go out there and run 26 miles, you know, and folks learn that, you know, that they can do something that they thought they couldn't do. And it's a community. Nobody runs a marathon through LA without there being a community supporting it.
It's so true. It can't even, you couldn't even do it if you technically wanted to, the way you just through lights and through, right? Like you don't, it has to be a community.
Yeah. And so that's what we are. I like that. You know, maybe the van will pick us all up, but that's okay. There will be another day and we'll get back on the road. And, you know, as long as we got legs, we'll give it another shot.
We'll give it a go. So Josh Fly made me cry a little bit. I kept to get together. Glenn McMurder then made me cry a bit, and I did my best to keep it together. And all I'm hearing is a replaying in my heart and mind is Josh's posture of humility and not shame as we walk through that, around him saying, I've been absentee in this conversation, even in my relationships and friends, but I was awakened. And then hearing Glenn say, maybe you don't feel like you have a voice, or what can I do? And he said the clarity came to him that I don't have to have those answers, but I can join the community. We're here for you. And we would love for you to join this community. That's really what it is. The whole thing is a community. And as a community, we're going to be going up the coast of California, visiting 7 missions, repurposing them or re-identifying them for the collective oneness of humanity. It's going to be a form of a peaceful protest, if you will, a demonstration in motion that takes the form of this epically inclusive race. Our actions are going to speak for us. Our oneness is going to speak for us. And we're inviting you into that right now. And let me show you it again. This is how to get involved. You put your phone up. It captures that QR code. It takes you to the website. It's Mission1Race.org. And you can go either to the event tab or to the get involved and go to run. And don't let that fool you, because when you get to the activation page, it'll be run. It'll be volunteer. It'll be a virtual version that you can register for. It'll be, I want to run one leg on one day. I want to be a part of a relay team for one day. I want to be a part of the entire mission as a single person to join our, I think 3 or 4 people we have right now doing that. Or I want to be a part of a relay team for the entire mission. All of those things will be there. And we'll walk this out together. It is not about, we'll walk it out together. That's what I mean. Like if there's a little bit of something going on in your heart and your gut, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Let's not stop at that fear. We're here. You know what I mean? We're here. When we're looking at ACT, and I want to make sure I land it properly. When we're looking at ACT, we have to have courage, which is a social change factor. We do need to lean into the social element of social action, decide within ourselves that we gotta now take that action, because we're not gonna say it's someone else's journey, because it's all of ours as human beings. We're not going to go numb. We're not going to allow our hearts to continue to be numb. You see this hour in this. I'm not judging you. I'm telling myself this. And I want to say this last thing is we leave as we have every single episode with 3 points and 3 CTAs, but the CTA might be narrowed down to 1. Is I'm thankful, and even in your position, in your role, in your company, in your neighborhood, in your family, maybe your first step is just that, saying, hey, whatever organization I'm a part of, a company, I'm feeling called to go and take on this Mission 1 Race to Journey 2020. Do you think it's something that we can do as a community within our org, within our company? And we walk alongside you there. You don't need to be experts there. You connect with us and we show them how they can activate. That's available at the page. Some quick examples from my personal life and walk that have surprised me and blessed me already is Cliff Bar. They have they're walking out a posture with their community and their endurance, fuel and bars, and you can look them up, but most people know them. Cliff Bars are awesome. But they have decided as a company that we're going to learn and lean into this long term. And right now it's not about the money and the sponsorships. It's about us making sure our fellow human beings, right, are okay. And they're going to give us product to help support this event. Then I think about Los Angeles Marathon, as I'm an LA ambassador, if you maybe seen on the post, and how they both, my first LA ambassador meeting, invited me into a conversation about the statement and our posture and the fact that knowing that the LA Marathon will be known as, and is known, the Los Angeles Marathon, as an inclusive community event where everyone is welcome and celebrated and so forth. That alignment there, and even them leaning into that with me. And last but not least, World Vision, where I serve as Senior Partnerships Manager, the partnership that we are literally inking as we speak. We've helped speak into the framework of something they've launched for pastors around the country called May We Be One, Pastors Pursuing Racial Justice. Think about that. That's never happened in the history of this organization. In this inclusive multi-ethnic group of pastors, every single one of them are going to be invited into the same event that you're involved in. It's going to be epic. It's going to be amazing. Here's the 3 points that we made from the very beginning that we're going to still do. Okay. We are the United States of America. Until any kind of further notice, we have freedom to choose. So we're going to take that freedom to choose and choose love and choose mission and choose oneness. No one can take that away from us. And if we make those choices collectively, the face, the energy, the interactions, the trips to the store, the baseball games, whatever we go to, it will change, and we will see it and we'll notice it. We want you a part of it. The CTA is this simple. I'm going to bring it full circle. You saw it. Play this video back if you need to. Join the community. And we're going to do some epic events. We're going to have some communities. We're going to learn together. We're going to grow together. And that itself is going to be our greatest witness and our greatest asset to the world. It's us walking it out and funding and helping being a part of those that are a part of the full range of this conversation of reconciliation, both the legislation and the systemic issues, as well as the day-by-day interactions of human in our hearts as a whole. Mission1Race, we are uniquely the same. Everyone gets to love. We truly believe that we can and will together transform the world, one heart, one mind, and one soul at a time. Always remember, we're not hating or hunting down those that have bias in their heart. We're seeking their hearts in relationship. Thank you for being a part of this 8 hours to choose. I hope you choose love. I hope you don't get weary in doing good. And I hope I see you out there in the journey 2020, virtually or live and in person. We'll keep in touch. God bless. In the name of love, oneness, and mission, your brother, Richard John Rutherford, aka Rich Rel. Love you all.